What's going on, guys? Stefan and Maverick here, S&E's Garage. We're gonna try to fix this transmission. What are we gonna do? So if you saw our last video, you'll see that this transmission actually is throwing some pressure codes, and the pump is sounding like it's aerating or cavitating, so I'm thinking this filter might be clogged. The torque converter is definitely shuddering, and we're more or less going to see if we can just get this thing to drive the way it is for a little while longer until we can source a transmission for it and, you know, continue to use it because we do enjoy using it. So what we went ahead is ran over to AutoZone. We bought the cheapest transmission filter we could find with a pan gasket, and we picked up a couple quarts of ATF plus 4. We have a 4th quart down here, different brand. And we're going to go ahead and get underneath it and try to fix the transmission. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and drop this cross member right here. There's going to be 3 bolts. There's one here, one in the center, and one right here on the other side. So let's go ahead and pull that down. That's going to give us access to the front of the pan, and then we're going to figure out the back side. Alright guys, so we got our cross member off. Maverick, what is that? It's the cross member, right? Yeah, so we got our cross member off. You'll see 2 of the bolts here. And you're going to see the other 3rd one here. I should probably move them so Maverick doesn't take them on me. But the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove this skid shield here. This is going to have 4 more 18mm bolts. There's going to be 2 up front, 1 here and 1 there. And that's going to give us access to the transfer case, because what we're actually going to do is loosen the transmission mounts a little bit, and we're going to jack the transfer case up, which is in turn going to lift up the transmission just enough for us to be able to get to those back pan bolts without dropping the exhaust. Alright guys, so what we did is we unbolted the 1 bolt here on the driver's side, which would be your left side, and then the 2 in the center, and then we loosened the one on the gas tank and just kind of swung it out of the way. And that should give us enough clearance here. So what we're going to do now is loosen the transmission mount bolts under here. There should be 3 of them, 1 here, 1 in the center, and 1 on the outside. And what that's going to do is give us some leeway here to jack this transfer case up. And like I said, that's going to give us the room to get to the rear bolts on this pan. You are still probably going to need some swivel sockets. We have ours out here just in case, but let's go ahead, loosen those transmission mount bolts. I'm just going to spray them down first and jack the trans up. Alright guys, so we have a jack here under our transfer case. We loosened all those bolts and then jacked it up quite a bit, so now you'll see we have a much clearer shot at all of these bolts here. So we're going to go ahead and start removing our trans pan bolts. We're going to leave 1 on either side. That way when we do go to break it loose, it doesn't just fall on the ground. And of course we're going to put a pan under here to catch whatever falls out. Those look like they're going to be probably, I'm going to go with a 10mm. If it's any different, I'll let you know. Alright guys, we got all but 2 of our bolts out. You'll see the whole back row is out. We left 1 here, just barely touching, 1 on the other side. So we're going to go get a dead blow hammer. We're just going to start tapping the corners here of the pan. That should be enough to break it loose. I personally do not like using a screwdriver to try to pry it down, because you can mar up the mating surfaces, and you don't want to do that. So we're just going to try to massage it off. And we're going to take care not to just let it dump, because we want to take a look at the pan and see exactly what's in it, because I'm curious to see what kind of contaminants or debris we have at the bottom of the pan. That's going to tell me a lot, so let me get it off. Alright guys, things for this trans ain't really looking too hot here. Looks like we got a bunch of clutch material here on the edges. Yeah, this ain't good. The magnet here, I mean, this isn't terrible depending on when this was last dropped, if ever, but we have a lot of clutch material in here. So I'm not thinking that anything we do here is going to help much, but we'll put a new filter in it anyway. We're already this far. We're just going to go ahead and clean this gasket surface off. I'm not sure when this filter was changed last, if at all. Maybe we can get a date code or something, but it doesn't really, that I can see, it doesn't really look like it's clogged. I mean, yeah, it looks a little dirty, but and this mating surface is actually pretty clean, so it looks like most of that stuff stayed on the pan, which is good. But we're just gonna let this drip dry for a little bit. You'll see we got trans fluid all over our wood, but I guess it is what it is. So let's let this drip dry the rest of the way. We'll pull this filter down and go clean that pan up. Alright guys, so we got this pan about as clean as I think it really matters, because with what we saw in here, this thing's pretty much doomed. If we can get it to dry for a little bit, awesome, but we're going to keep in the back of our minds that we need to get a transfer this. So now we're just going to go underneath it. We're going to pull that filter off and get our new filter ready. Should just be a couple of 10 millimeters. Let's look on the new filter. Actually, I can tell you exactly wherever I put it. Did I put it back in here? Yes. Alright, so let's open this up really quick. Here's our gasket. Hang on one sec. Yep, it's going to be two 10 millimeters. There's one here and one here. And when you pull the old one down, don't forget, check for the O-ring. If it's not there, get a pick, pull it down. Alright guys, here's the old filter. You'll see that O-ring stayed up in the trans, so we do have to go and get that out. But if you do look in here, you can see this thing's got a ton of clutch material in it. Some metallic bits in there too. So this filter is probably clogged, and we may be able to get this thing to drive by replacing it. So we're going to go ahead, grab our pick, get that O-ring out of the trans. And these were actually Torx bits. I'm sorry. Earlier I said they may be 10 millimeters. They are not. It was a T25 that pulled that off. So we just have to get that O-ring out of that hole right there. You can see it. And then we're going to slide the new filter back up. Alright guys, so bear in mind, this is a 2010 Wrangler. We're going to look at the date code on this old filter. So you're going to see the 10. That is likely the year. So this is manufactured in 2010. 5 would be January, February, March, April, May 10th. So this was manufactured May 10th of 2010, which means this is the original filter to this transmission. So this pan has probably never been dropped, and the filter, or the fluid, unless it was exchanged or flushed, is probably the original fluid. So that's going to tell us a lot with the condition of the inside of this transmission. And like I said, this filter looks pretty rough. So we're in a position now. We got the new filter in. We got our pan cleaned up, and it's starting to get dark. So we're just going to go ahead, put our gasket on this pan, and we're just going to tighten it up real quick, get it tight, and then I think we're going to stop for the night. I just want to seal the transmission off before we go, before we call it a night, and then tomorrow we'll pick up, put everything back together and put some fluid in it and hope for the best. But with what we found, we're obviously going to be expecting the worst. Alright guys, so it's the next morning. We had a crazy storm roll through here last night, so I kind of had to wrap it up real quick. You see, there's no real damage here. The tarp blew off, I think, but that's about it. But what we went ahead and did last night is we got our pan up. So the pan is up, and then I took the jack out from underneath the the transfer case. So all I have to do is run those bolts down that we loosened up on the transmission mount, and then we can go ahead and put fluid in it. Now, I did some soul searching and some thinking last night, and we already knew this torque converter was bad, like I said. So the only thing that we can hope here is that all of that metal and all of that debris that we saw in that pan is from the converter, and that the filter did its job by clogging up, and we didn't drive it long making that noise. So, and when we were driving it, when it happened, it was still shifting okay. So if we slap this thing back together and it shifts and drives the way it did before I did all this, I'm gonna ride it out as long as I can. And I'm thinking, instead of getting this one rebuilt, I'll buy a core and have that one rebuilt and just leave it in the garage. That way I have it when I need it. So that's probably what we're gonna do, assuming that this fixes the immediate issue that we had of our fluid concern and our pump noise and our low line pressure. So let's go get a trans funnel. You fill it from the dipstick right here, and let's dump some fluid in it, fire it up, and then I'm gonna have to check the fluid level. I might have to run out to the store and buy more fluid, because I only bought 3 quarts and I had about 3/4 of a quart here, so I'm probably gonna need to put more in it than that, but let's get started. All right, guys, we went ahead and tightened our 3 16mm nuts on that trans mount. We're gonna go ahead and put the transfer case skid shield back up, followed by this cross member using the 18mm bolts that we removed yesterday. These guys here. I already went ahead and put 3 3/4 quarts in the trans with our spill-proof funnel, and then we got to get under there and wipe off the exhaust and everything. I'll probably spray it down with a hose too once I'm done under here, because it's covered in trans fluid and I don't really feel like smelling it smoking, because it smells like shit. So let's keep going. When we're done, before we start this thing up, curiosity is going to kill me here. We're going to go in the garage and cut this open and see what that filter media looked like, because I am very curious and it makes some good content. So we'll open it up. Like we mentioned, this is strictly curiosity here. Under normal operating conditions, you should never have to change this filter. If you have enough debris coming out of your transmission to cause this filter to clog, as you saw with this vehicle, you have a lot more problems than just a clogged filter. But the way this works is the fluid comes up in through here and is basically sandwiched in between these 2 plates here. And just look at all the junk and debris in this filter. This is all, I can almost guarantee you, this is all from the inside of that torque converter. Just look at it. This filter was completely clogged with clutch material and metal. So, like I said, this transmission's doomed. It's gonna need to be pulled one way or another at some time. But we got our fluid in there. Let's fire it up. We're gonna hose the bottom off and then see what kind of engagement we have, if it's delayed like it was yesterday, or how it shifts, and take it from there. All right, guys, we got her running. We did go ahead and hose everything off down here. I don't hear our whining noise yet, so that might be a good sign. Let's see. So our whining noise that this transmission was making is gone. Let's put our emergency brake down. Let's see if it goes right into gear. And it does. Let's throw it in drive. Engages. Alright, so I'm on level ground right now. Before I go drive this thing, I'm gonna go check the fluid level. There's gonna be 2 different ways you can check it. There's gonna be the low dots and the high dots. You know, one's low coolant or low temperature, one's hot. So we're gonna make sure that it's in between the 2 low dots. If it's not, I have some generic ATF I'll just add in there to top it off. I'm not gonna go to the store and buy more trans fluid for this thing. We already know this trans is, you know, it's doomed. But let's go check that fluid, see where we're at, and then take it for a ride. All right, guys, we went ahead and got that transmission fluid up to the second dot on the cold line. So I feel confident that it has enough fluid in it. We always have to drive it with overdrive off because the torque converter does shutter if we don't. But let's see how she shifts here. It does have a little bit of a growling noise in first gear when you let off. It's always done that. Let's get out on the road. Alright, let's see. Here's the 1-2 shift. Shifted good. Let's see the 2-3. There's the 2-3. And now it's going to stay in third gear because we have overdrive off. If I turn overdrive on, you'll see the 3-4 shift. Alright, there was the 3-4. So, for the time being, the Jeep is now drivable because we replaced that transmission filter. Let's see again, let's let it go through the gears. There's a shift. Alright, so bear in mind, like I mentioned before, under normal conditions, if you change your fluid every 30 to 60,000 miles, whether you do it from the cooler or you drop the pan, realistically, you should never, ever have to change that transmission filter. The only reason you should ever have to change that transmission filter is if it gets clogged. And if it gets clogged, it's getting clogged from somewhere. Transmissions, by design, do not produce any type of, how do I say this? They don't produce any type of byproduct like an engine would. An engine produces carbon that needs to be filtered out. A transmission should not do that. Under normal conditions, changing your fluid often enough, it shouldn't happen. So if your transmission fluid gets clogged to the point that it's causing it to have low line pressure, you have another issue going on in that transmission. And like I told you in the beginning, we already knew we had another issue with that torque converter shutter, and I'm pretty confident that most of that material that we found in that filter is from the torque converter clutches. So we bought some time. That's all we did. We basically we put a band-aid on a gunshot wound, and we'll drive it like this for a little bit, but we are going to start sourcing a transmission for it. So if this video helped you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing the video. It helps us be able to keep doing things like this, and we appreciate you guys. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this helped you, and we will see you on the next one.